Welcome to Intentional Divorce Insights. I'm Leah Hadley, certified divorce financial analyst, accredited financial counselor, and the founder of Intentional Divorce Solutions. I'll be your guide through the complexities of divorce, finance, and emotional wellness. Join me as we uncover practical tips and empowering insights to help you navigate your divorce with clarity and intention. Hi there, and welcome back to Intentional Divorce Insights. Today we're diving into a topic that a lot of people don't really think about, but still find very overwhelming and don't even realize why. And that is that there is this whole vocabulary that is associated with the divorce process, terms that we don't necessarily use in everyday language, that can be really confusing. And we have Theresa Viera here today to really help us get some clarity around some of the big terms that I think will be really helpful for you, so you're not feeling so overwhelmed when it comes to going through your divorce. Well, first, let me tell you a little bit about Theresa. She does have intimate knowledge of North Carolina family court system, which began as a child amidst a domestic violence and child abuse situation. Although it took years in court to address the wrongs inflicted upon her family, she can honestly say that her family made it through and everyone is better than okay today, which is fantastic. She conducted her undergraduate studies at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Thereafter, she pursued her law degree at the University of North Carolina School of Law in Chapel Hill, where she was able to hone her skills as an orator, writer, and legal thinker. As a family law attorney, she utilizes the tools of negotiation, mediation, and litigation to find solutions for families navigating the legal system. And if able, she hopes to be an inspiration to others, which is so refreshing to hear from a family law attorney. Welcome, Theresa. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Leah. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to share this knowledge with your listeners.
Terrific. So before we get into some of the specific terms, can you just tell us a little bit about what's involved in family law?
Sure. So family law, unfortunately, they tend to equate only with divorce. And it's interesting because the divorce is one piece of a much bigger puzzle, which I'm so excited to talk about the other vocabulary that comes along with divorce because of that. So the divorce itself is just the process of taking a married couple, two persons, and separating them into single persons under the eyes of the law. That's really it as it relates to the divorce. And that's one piece of family law. The other pieces, though, as you can imagine, can include much more complicated and detailed issues, such as property distributions or debt division or children. And children bring a whole host of other legal matters that come up. So that falls under the family law umbrella. Additionally, some other realms will include domestic violence, child abuse, termination of parental rights at times, and it also includes the specific form of contracts that is between spouses or soon-to-be spouses, or even former spouses. And so there's a certain section of contract law that applies only to the family law sphere. So that includes premarital agreements or #prenup. That includes separation agreements, and that includes a whole host of other agreements that can be signed by former, current, or soon-to-be spouses.
Okay, great. So really, there's quite a bit involved.
Yes, I agree.
What is the role of a family law attorney in the divorce process specifically?
In the divorce process, a family law attorney is there to help our clients not only understand how the law relates to their relationship, because individuals get married due to a number of reasons, but generally it's to create a family, to create a union, to create a partnership, if you will. And under the eyes of the law, those relationships get very complicated, is what I'll say. And a lot of people get married not knowing how many obligations and responsibilities they assume under the law. And a family law attorney's there to guide someone if they are in the process of going through that divorce. I like to say that a family law attorney enters at a specific chapter of a party's life, and that chapter is taking that marital relationship and closing the marriage itself, that chapter in life, if you will. And then that family law attorney helps them plan and create that new chapter for when they are separated or divorced.
Excellent. And I know it can feel very stressful for people who are just getting started with the process to even think about reaching out to a family law attorney. How do you recommend people even find someone to talk to?
Well, first, let me validate that feeling. A lot of individuals feel like as soon as they are going to talk to a professional, such as a family law attorney, especially because we're not cheap and generally not free, they think they've already decided, okay, we're ending the relationship. And really, I can understand from an emotional perspective why that is, but it really isn't the situation. I like to tell individuals it's best to be informed before you make any big life decision. So just because you sit down with a family law attorney does not mean you're getting divorced the very next day. I'm going to stress that. Rather, it is a means for you to obtain the education that not only is good for you, but that you really need to understand what will happen should a divorce occur. So I like to stress to individuals we are more educators than, diehard litigators in a courtroom before you meet with us. I even have clients that joke way after the fact, after we're done with their divorce, they're like, oh, well, you aren't as intimidating as I thought. I'm like, well, I'm a family law attorney. I'm not, one of the attorneys on Law and Order or the Suits, right? I am actually here to help you with your family. So it's best to sit down with that family law attorney as soon as you even think about possible separation, more so for the education piece than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point because a lot of times people really do wait until, things are so bad that they are absolutely, divorce is inevitable. But a lot of times people are in this process of decision making for a long period of time just because they don't have the information and they don't necessarily know what the process looks like, what's going to entail. And in some cases, they're staying in a situation that might not be safe.
Yeah.
And so really having that education and understanding and acknowledging the fact that maybe this decision hasn't been made, it's still okay to talk to somebody and be informed. The other piece of it, of course, is your spouse can ask for a divorce at any time. And so it is good to know this information so that if you are in that situation, you're at least prepared.
I 100% agree because I see a lot of individuals staying in an unhealthy or possibly dangerous marital relationship or romantic relationship, not knowing that there is help out there. On the flip side, I also see people leaving just, I won't take anything with me and giving up a lot when they would otherwise be entitled to a good bit if they had sat down with a family law attorney sooner. And so there's so many different tools that we have as family law attorneys that I would love the common person to know more about, simply because maybe we can save some marriages, or maybe we can save the situation where we don't see as rampant or as tragic of domestic violence situations as well. So it's a whole paradigm. And the more that individuals are educated, the more that they can take a better next step for themselves and their family.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of terminology around how people go about getting a divorce. A lot of times people think traditionally about litigation, which I think surprises people that a lot of people don't choose to go that route. People hear about mediation but might not really know exactly what it is. And then arbitration, sometimes people think is like mediation. I just think there's some confusion there. I'm wondering if you could dive into the details of each of those to really help our audience understand the differences.
Oh, I love this topic because you are so right. So many people don't understand the differences. And although we have a short time here, we could go on for hours on this. But I do hear it a lot where individuals have been brought to, I call it the edge of a cliff. And they're like, I'm ready to jump. I'm ready to start throwing some mud. I'm ready to fight. And that is the litigation process. And suddenly we find ourselves in a courtroom, yes, arguing about the law, about different fact patterns, about different situations. But I think the key to litigation is that the power no longer is in the hands of either party or soon to be ex-spouse. It is in the hands of a judge. And so let's kind of back up for a second and analyze that reality. A judge has never lived with you. A judge has likely never been in your house. A judge will hear minimal information about your family's situation, but then the judge is required to, by law, make what we call findings of fact, meaning the judge is going to tell you what happened, even though you are the one who actually lived it. And then the judge is going to enter an order, and that order is going to dictate what you can and cannot do. And in family law, I would say a judge has the most authority than any other judge, because that judge can tell you how you're going to spend your money, where your money's going to go, how your property and debts are going to be divided, when you get to see your children, right? And that's huge. And I don't know how an average individual would want a stranger telling them when they can and cannot see their child. And then finally, the financial circumstances around your child's upbringing. And so that's a lot of authority to give to this very smart, trained, and educated person, but still a stranger to your situation. A judge is there, litigation is there as the emergency option at the end of the day. So I'm not saying people should not go there if they need to, but it must be an absolute need to go to litigation. I hear a lot of my clients say, well, I want my day in court. And my response 99% of the time is, but do you? Because your day in court is not what you imagine. What you imagine is informed by your friends who've been divorced, or possibly someone who's been not treated fairly by the judicial system. It's also informed by reality TV. It's informed by Law and Order and the Suits, like I mentioned a moment ago. But family law attorneys who live and breathe this stuff, I go in and out of court very often. And so if you're thinking about litigation, you really need to listen to your family law attorney and understand the realities of that process. Side note, it's never quick, never. I like to tell some of my clients it could take a year, 2 years, possibly longer. And I had one client recently after the final child custody trial look at the calendar and say, oh, it's been about 2 years. And she's like, I didn't believe you when you told me that. I'm like, I know you didn't, but that's okay. I'm still here. Like, that's what my job is as family law attorney, to guide you through this litigation process. Now, on the flip side, there are other tools, like you mentioned. Mediation is a fantastic tool because unlike shifting that power and authority for final decisions to that stranger judge, you are actually, in fact, keeping that final decision-making authority with the parties themselves. I get it. You probably don't like your soon-to-be ex-spouse. You think they're unreliable, not trustworthy, etc. I get it. But at the end of the day, you created this marriage together. You possibly had children together. So what a better way to make sure you try to keep some of that authority both in your hands, but also in the hands of the other person that has met your child, that knows about the accounts. Even if they're not honest with you, that's what the tools of mediation and legal representation can help with. So specifically, mediation is the process by which a third party neutral, who should be trained in mediation, comes in and basically is like that push and pull advocate. Why? Because their end goal is a resolution. It's not to please one spouse or the other. It's not necessarily to be there for the child even, but rather the goal is an amicable resolution. That's what they're advocating for. So hopefully, and it depends on the circumstance, but hopefully both parties have an attorney, and that attorney will guide that respective party on their legal rights and considerations, because that attorney would know what a judge would order in a courtroom as well as the law itself. But then the mediator pushes and pulls and goes back and forth between both sides to try to come to a meeting ground. A lot of cases resolve in mediation, and what's fantastic is that you can get creative, a lot more creative than a judge can. And I appreciate that creativity, because sometimes both parties will value different things. So we can negotiate a resolution that actually props up what both parties put value on, but that a judge could never order because they just don't have the tools or the information to do so. Go ahead.
Before you go on, I want to highlight something that Theresa said, and that is that she said that both of the parties have attorneys. I am a big proponent of mediation as well, and really encourage those going through mediation to seek legal counsel during the process, because there's a lot of people online saying that mediation doesn't work. There's a lot of people who have said, in my experience, mediation didn't work. Now, sometimes the courts require you to go to mediation before the next step, and people aren't really invested in the process. And so they're not necessarily really trying to resolve the issues. So I think sometimes that gives mediation a bad reputation. But I think the bigger thing is that people are unprepared, and that they're not necessarily knowledgeable about their rights. There may be some confusion. People read stuff online from different states or, in different forums, different experiences, and they're coming with a lot of misinformation. And so I just wanted to reiterate what Theresa said there, the value of having that other person as a guide while you're going through the mediation process to really help you be successful in that process.
Totally agree. And I could not stress that further. And maybe it's also a misunderstanding of, we're already hiring this one person, the mediator. They can be our one-stop shop. Unfortunately, though, as noted a moment ago, a mediator is a third-party neutral. They cannot give you legal advice. They cannot advocate for your position. And they're not a judge either, right? So they're not going to hear your arguments and say you're right or wrong. That's not the position that the mediator is in. Rather, again, that mediator is focused on an amicable resolution. And you might not actually like the mediator because they're going to be pushing and pulling you all the way through the process. At the end of the day, if you are able to reach a resolution, you want to make sure you're reaching a resolution by understanding what the law is and being informed on all the circumstances. And that's the key. The key right there is having an attorney to make sure they're sitting next to you in that mediation process to make sure you are informed. So I love that note. Thank you for exemplifying that point. And then on to the other tool that you were referencing, arbitration. So I like to say arbitration is that middle ground between litigation and mediation. Arbitration is with a private party instead of a judge. And generally what I recommend that arbitrator, if they are going to be making family law decisions, that they also have family law experience, whether it's as a family law attorney in their other practice, or maybe a certified family financial or family related mediator, or some other similar family divorce professional training. When you sit down with the arbitrator is going to be able generally to give you more of an opportunity to express your concerns, certain facts that may not be admissible in a courtroom due to applicable evidence rules. And then generally it's more in an informal setting. So you're not in a courtroom with someone sitting on a high seat and another person sitting at a table with a microphone. An arbitration generally is held in a private setting, in a conference room, generally at an attorney's office. And I want to bring attention to that environment because when a person is more comfortable in an environment, they are able to be more comfortable in sharing details that may matter most when making these critical decisions about children and finances. And so in the arbitration situation, parties, again, I recommend that both parties be represented by legal representation, but they sit down with the arbitrator. The arbitrator accepts information and evidence similar to a judge, tries to push and pull similar to a mediator to see if there's any meeting grounds. But in the case of certain situations where the parties are not able to meet on any agreements, then that arbitrator does have the legal authority to make a decision similar to a judge. So a good example would be maybe the parties agree for the most part on the medical decisions related to the child. Great, the arbitrator will put XYZ, this is what the parties agree to the child's medical care. But what if the parties don't agree about the child's school? I'll tell you right now, at least here in Mecklenburg County, Charlotte, North Carolina, a judge is not going to decide the school for a child. But an arbitrator may, because the arbitrator can sit there and actually hear from both sides. Okay, why do you like school A? Why do you like school B? And then after a lot of information is processed, maybe it even takes a couple of days or further investigation into the schools, that arbitrator can take that information and say, okay, all right, parties, I know you don't agree on the school. I'm going to make the decision. We're going to go with school A. And that create some clarity when the parties are not able to come to an agreement on very specific issues, but also doesn't throw a bomb on the other stuff, where the other stuff could reach an agreement but wouldn't do so if everything had to be litigated.
This has been so valuable, I think, for people who are listening, especially if you're at the start of the process, just getting some clarification around what your options are, some different possibilities, getting some clarification on language. We dove into a few specific terms today, but there, like I said, is a whole vocabulary that goes with the divorce process. So as you're talking to the divorce professionals that you're working with, I encourage you to ask questions. You're not asking a stupid question if you're not clear on that particular vocabulary, because this is terminology that these people use every day, and this may be the first time you're hearing it, which is totally normal and okay. And so I just really encourage you to make sure you understand what you're hearing and you know what your options are. Now, Theresa actually has a podcast of her own, which is a great free resource for you. Theresa, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So it's called Legal Lounge, and we bring in various divorce professionals to sit down and have conversations about what we run into every day. And it is an opportunity for the listener to come into the conversation and think about some of the things that we're discussing. It's also a critical tool that I think is needed in our community to not only expand on the vocabulary as we did here, but also for people to listen in on these conversations, because these are conversations that an average person may not otherwise be exposed to. And so Legal Lounge is there to help dispel mistruths and possible false information that is out there, to hear it straight from the divorce professionals themselves. So I bring on guests such as tax attorneys, business attorneys, financial advisors, coaches, life coaches, business coaches, and the list goes on. And it really is to expose our conversations to the average listener, to bring the education to their doorstep.
Terrific. So definitely make sure to check that out. And where can people find out more about you, Theresa?
Sure. So my name is Theresa Viera. I am the attorney and founder of Modern Legal. We have a website, modernlegalnc.com, because we're based in North Carolina. So check out our website. We're also make information available on various social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. Follow us on those platforms. And then, check out our YouTube channel page, which not only has our Legal Lounge podcast, but also has a number of other information videos and just knowledge that we want to share. So check us out and share what you learn.
Super helpful. Thank you again, Theresa, for your knowledge and for taking the time to be with us today. And for our listeners, we look forward to talking with you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on Intentional Divorce Insights. It's a privilege to share this time with you. I hope each episode offers valuable guidance to navigate your journey. If you find our content helpful, please leave a review to help others discover the benefits of intentional decision-making in divorce. Until next time, take care and continue to embrace your path with intention.